I always wanted to be a teacher when I started school.
We're here for the students, and we want what's best for the student.
And I love watching people learn.
Your teacher, student, academics, curriculum, whatever, that center post, the one that keeps this education together.
Hello, and welcome to the Last Best Learning podcast, a podcast designed for Montana's educators, where our mission is to deliver digestible and relevant professional learning that honors our educators' capacity in an increasingly busy world. Our state's educators empower minds, elevate future, and inspire self-discovery, and we walk beside them. Today, your hosts, Katrina, Michelle, and Claire, OPI's math, science, and ELA coordinators, are going to be visiting with both Rebecca Goff and Megan Callahan from Native Teaching Aids. In this episode, we'll discuss how playing isn't just for recess. Many teachers and students will tell you that play can be one of the most powerful tools for learning. This idea isn't new. It's been a cornerstone of formal education for over 2 centuries. Traditional games have been used for generations to pass down knowledge, reinforce cultural values, and teach essential life skills such as teamwork, problem solving, and resilience. And as if that's not enough to convince you, modern research on this topic abounds, including a study by Freeman et al. From 2013 from the University of California, San Francisco, which found that students in play-based environments are 1.5 times more likely to succeed compared to those in traditional lecture-based settings. Today, we are joined by Becky and Megan, who are continuing this tradition by blending traditional knowledge with modern learning tools. As leaders in Native Teaching Aids, they work alongside Indigenous Knowledge keepers, tribal governments, schools, teachers, and students to create culturally responsive educational games, offering powerful opportunities for student learning while preserving language and tradition.
Megan and Becky, can you start us off by introducing us to yourselves and telling us a little bit about Native Teaching Aids, mostly what inspired its creation and what's the mission behind your work?
Sure. I'm Megan Callahan. I am first-generation descendant of Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe. And I found Native Teaching Aids after I picked up some Ojibwe games for my children here locally. It was just kind of fate that brought me here, and I love working here at Native Teaching Aids.
Yeah, I'm Rebecca Goff, or Becky. I am the executive director for Native Teaching Aids. I'm also the co-founder. My husband, Brandon, and I started it together in 2013. How we kind of started was I moved here from Minnesota to go to grad school for a master's in linguistics at the University of Montana. And in that program, there is an immersion school called the Cutswood School that is under the Pegan Institute. And at that time, the founder was still there. His name's Daryl Kipp, and he was asking for resources. So as part of the grad students, we were creating these storybooks in Blackfoot. And then we did a second book where we recorded the students of the Cutswood School, that immersion school. Through all this work in grad school, I'm not Native, and it kind of opened my eyes to this almost naiveness that there's just materials for anything, anywhere, that's not the case. And so I approached Daryl Kipp, and I said, what if there was a company that just worked on material development? The Pegan Institute was our first client. We're still have a great relationship with them. They do amazing things up there at that school. So it's kind of how that all started.
You mentioned collaboration being really important in working with these communities that you're going into. And I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about how your company partners with Indigenous Knowledge keepers, tribal governments, schools, educators, and students, all the things, in order to develop those culturally responsive learning tools.
I really believe that our collaborations start with just a simple conversation. And really the question we ask with these communities at first is, what do you need to be successful in your community to revitalize your culture and your language? And then we start from there.
Approaching something from a place of humbleness, like we're not coming here as saviors, we're coming here to work with you. It's really just like how we're presenting ourselves. I feel like we couldn't be here if we weren't rooted in collaboration as a company. It just wouldn't work.
Earlier, you mentioned how you worked with a school on the Blackfoot Reservation, the Immersion School. And I'm wondering if you can share some additional examples of how Native Teaching Aids has worked with other schools in the past. And what kinds of resources or learning experiences have you helped bring into classrooms in Montana?
I think the Cutswood School is a good one. So early on, like I said, that was our first client. So we did like an online dictionary, and a storybook thing that went on your app that was created by a student who's now a teacher at the Cutswood School of the Language. So we started there, and then Brandon and I are really big board gamers. We love playing games. What we realized inside of this was that opportunity for games is this mini immersion environment that you can establish with the people you're playing with or playing against. Where a lot of Native American languages, because of the low speaker level, there isn't that ability to say, like, I want to learn Spanish, I'm going to go to Mexico or Spain and some of those areas and immerse myself in that, and then I will pick it up, right? You don't have, not all the time, very rarely do you have that opportunity. And this was this idea. It was like, oh, what if we just created these? Played it with the students, and the students loved it. They loved seeing the language. They started pronouncing it. They were teaching us how to say the language. And we're having these kids and these students share this with us. And over the past 13 years now, I think, it's been many multifaceted things where we'll bring in like videos. He'll get a green screen, and then we'll work with puppets. We've done like Brandon likes to fly. So we brought drones in to have the kids play and break, stuff like that. That makes it a lot of fun, including like students now come to us with game ideas.
If teachers have extra time, kids can get on and be immersed in the culture and the language of these communities that have kid zones. So how many times do teachers play fun science games or math games on the computer, right? It's interactive, it's fun, and the kids love it. So we've also been able to throw culture and language into those fun games and provide those for communities for school use.
Yeah.
You guys have posters, right, that can go in the classrooms as well?
Yes. Yeah. So there's posters for immersion. The Kunsum school here, they had us do those alphabet strips you see. We did that in Salish Caliste. So we did the alphabet for them. And then books, coloring books. There's classroom kits now that we can do. It's really expanded. It's very exciting. Yeah.
Speaking of which, we know that right now you're partnering with OPI on a board game creation project. So can you tell us more about that and who's involved and what you hope to accomplish with it?
Yeah, this is the end of the pilot project right now. So through this first year, we are working with Mission School. The overview of it it's a student-led program where the students will come up with an idea. There's a 10-module system we've developed that takes them from let's think about what games are and kind of a little bit of basic game theory, and then take it through the steps of now you're at your prototype, and Native Teaching Aids will print a printable prototype for you to play test. And then they learn about play testing, how to take criticism, how to use feedback, how to really think of things, critical analysis, developing things, coming up with solutions that are problems.
So St. Ignatius High School developed a board game this year. So they came up with a seasonal round game that's based around Coyote, which is the Salish's trickster. You can choose your meeple, as we call them, and you move around the board, and you can either find resources, lose resources, come across a natural disaster, or be visited by Coyote. And Coyote can either help you or he can take things away from you. And all of the, on the Coyote cards that you draw, they have traditional stories. And then, once you go around, you pass the season, then you're kind of safe for that season. And you're trying to collect resources. And when you get so many resources, then you're able to upgrade the resource, which is really cool. So it was a great time when we went over to the OPI Rise conference for their peers to play the game with them and see these kids be like, you guys made this? What? It was awesome. So hopefully we'll have some more interest in that on this next session and be able to make a couple more games. And then kind of looking at the future, what are we going to do with this program and how is it going to benefit the students across Montana?
So you both have mentioned a few times now that there's a lot of traditional knowledge that is being utilized in the creation of these games and materials. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit about how you ensure that Indigenous communities retain the ownership of these materials, particularly their language, stories, and cultural knowledge when you develop these materials for school use.
Producing these games with the different communities, they're not only relevant, but they're correct. So there's no misinformation in these. And I think it's really valuable then for somebody to take it and make sure that they're teaching the correct things to these students. So there's never a question. Am I teaching the right thing? Am I speaking correctly about this topic? And with our instructions and glossaries that we include, it's the information that the communities want everybody to be aware of and know.
On the back of every box or the book inside of that, like the tribe is it's copyrighted to that community, so you know where this game is concepted from. What we also started doing is everyone gets recognized. Who worked on that language? Who did we record? Where did we get our resources? I think if we want to make this as Native teaching aids and getting it approved by communities of like, is this shareable, making sure that this is an accessible way for a teacher to go in and say like, hey, this is this history of like where you live, like where you're standing on. This is, you know, what the Ottawa were doing during this time, or the Blackfeet or the Crow. This is what was going on here. And so and just having that kind of relationship of like what was going on that other side. So you're so much about the government and the soldiers and the armies and what they did, but what was the other side doing? What were the natives doing? What was the Native American tribes doing at that time? So I think there's a lot of easy, accessible things that could be done inside the classrooms that are approachable and accessible for those teachers.
Yeah, I think that's so important, Becky, because I think a lot of teachers in Montana really do want to do the work. They would love to have instruction that's integrated with IFA and that honors the places and the peoples that are in the spaces that the school is in. But it is hard to know what's accurate, and you know, they don't want to offend anybody. They don't want to present misinformation. They don't want to perpetuate bias that might exist in the community or anything like that. And so just knowing that you guys are going to these communities and saying, first of all, what's acceptable to share? And second of all, how can we make sure it's accurate when we do share it? Is just, I think, a really great approach to helping teachers kind of break down those barriers and just trust those materials and get them in the classroom.
Yeah. I would say most of our product line is IFA friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
E-friendly.
E-friendly.
Yeah, I like the part about hearing the language, especially like as a former ELA teacher, when you would read texts and sometimes you don't know how to necessarily pronounce something, but you want to do justice to it. So it's awesome that is like right there at the fingertips.
Yes.
I want to backtrack a little and talk more about kind of play-based learning as a theory. So we know that it is helpful for learning, but we also know that it's kind of undervalued in most traditional educational settings, or maybe westernized would be a better word than traditional. So what makes play-based learning, especially through those board games you guys were talking about, such a powerful tool for students?
I think a lot of times in a school setting, it's a teacher versus a class, and we're talking at them or we're trying to share with them. And I think a lot of times our kids can get distracted, especially some of our Indigenous kids, right? We come from lines that are hunters, gatherers, doers. We're not meant to be, oral traditions. We're not really meant to be sitting around. And I know my kids follow that line very well. But to be able to sit down and give them something to do and interact with them in an everyday setting or around a table as a family, as a community, as we're supposed to be, is super beneficial for them. Just communicating and talking back and forth. That dialogue is huge. I've just been so lucky to be able to have Native Teaching Aid games in my home, since we do live on the Flathead Reservation right now, and Ojibwe is not the language here. So to be able to use these games to interact with my children, they have picked it up incredibly fast. I think play-based learning should be everywhere, honestly, but it's not really easy to do with large classrooms.
It even has that benefit to the instructor too, because the instructor, I mean, you were teachers, right? And you get exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I've had to do demos or anything like that, when even at the RISE conference, I was just impressed. I'm like, I cannot believe teachers do this every Monday through Friday. Like, I just couldn't. It is exhausting because you're in there. You want to keep them engaged. You want to get them excited about what you're learning and what you're doing. And then having that interactivity where the students all of a sudden are interacting with each other and guiding each other. And it's almost this flip of teaching them those leadership skills and teaching them how to figure things out on their own. It has so many levels to it for benefit and in any subject, in any area of the school.
Yeah, kids will teach each other if you let them.
Yeah, there's so much going on in gameplay, right? It's like teaching is about so much more than transferring knowledge on content area. We want them to know the math, yes, but we also want them to know how to interact with each other and coordinate and cooperate and problem solve and work in communities and things like that. And that doesn't happen in just the math content, right? You need a game or you need an activity or something to help those pieces come together. So I love that the gameplay that you guys are creating is doing that.
I'm really happy that you guys have been bringing up these examples from the Cutswood School because we know language revitalization is a priority in a lot of Indigenous communities. So you might have already kind of addressed this question, but how do the games and resources support Indigenous language learning and cultural retention?
When you put things in front of kids, when it becomes familiar, when you see it every day or often, it just becomes a normal thing. So to be able to put the cultural resources or the words or whatever in front of these kids, the more often you do it, the easier it is for them to pick up.
And developing, passive learning, where they're just exposure to it. Another really good example too is I know I use Blackfeet a lot, but it's the language also I know the best. And so inside of this, I always had problems with the word deer in Blackfeet, which is awakasi. And until one of the teachers at the Cutswood School, he was studying the pictographs for Blackfeet. I had to draw it so many times, and as I'm drawing every word, he's telling me what it is in repetition. So now I know, like, deer is awakasi because of that moment. So I'm like, you're doing something, you're hearing it, and then it's almost like you're reading it too, because that was the language at some point in time or the interpretation.
Yeah, similar to when we teach kids like letter sounds in English, right? We say like itch, right? And so we make them do like a little. That's what Jackie does anyway, our literacy coordinator. I'm learning something from her. But we're making them connect what they're saying, what they're seeing to an action. For teachers who want to bring more of what we've talked about, that play-based and culturally responsive learning into their classrooms, where should they start? Like, how do they even begin?
Well, we have a lot of different available things on our website, which is nativeteachingaids.com. Those are the communities who want their products shared and that are available. And we're continuously adding to that list and to our shop. But my advice for teachers in the school systems that would like to start is start small. Pick up a Go Fish game, and when you have extra time, have the kids play it, scan the QR codes and hear it. Or pick up Powwow Highway or Indian Relay, which are two of our Blackfeet board games, and sit down with the kids and play it. Even if you're unable to say the words at first, get it in front of them. Let them see it. Let them ask questions about it. And there's resources available in those games that explain like the cultural norms of it and even the language.
And the history games are great. Powwow Highway and Indian Relay are great because it's a lot about symbols, or you're moving horses, or you're traveling the powwow circuit with Powwow Highway. And the language in there is very minimal, whereas it's really about dancing and competing for dancers. That's the one that was developed by those students from the Crestwood School.
I think you said earlier too, one thing I was picking up on, Becky, that you mentioned was like when you started, you just went in to communities seeking to like learn and understand. And I think that is a really good way to start for teachers as well. Like we want to be the expert in the room, but we don't have to be. We can be honest with our students and say, you know what, I actually don't know much about this community, but here's this, timeline or these treaty cards. We're going to learn about it together and go through this all together. And that's okay. And then I wanted to ask you guys too, if you heard of the Small Number Counts series from Simon Fraser University up there in Vancouver?
No.
They have like this book series that are all mathematical, but through an Indigenous perspective. And then all the stories are also translated to ASL, Blackfeet, sometimes Cree. They have all these different translations and everything, and it's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, and that's another thing too that is helpful to know, that Megan kind of touched on this before I forget. Megan touched on this, but there's what you see on our website, right, or the communities that are like, yes, please, like, make our products widely available. There are other communities we work with that says, like, we just want you to be our printer, and then just they'll get a hold of us. We print, a bulk amount for them, ship it to them, and then they manage the distribution. We do that with a lot of communities too. Another one is sometimes we're just their designer, and then they have a printer on hand. That's a little more rare, but that has happened too. So I've always said to every community, like, we can be as involved or as little involved as you want us to be.
We help, you know what I mean, to show these communities and these tribes their resilience. Throughout all of the trauma and the things that have happened, we're still here. We're still speaking our language. We're still teaching our kids. And we're really working hard on getting back to who we were and where we came from, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm. And on that beautiful, beautiful note, thank you so much for joining us today and being here and sharing all the things. I'm excited for this episode to get published. I think that the field in general, as you guys know, is like begging for IFA resources that they can trust. And so I think this is going to be a good one for people.
Thank you so much for having us. Like, I love talking about my company. So it's nice to be sitting in a room with people who have to listen to me talk about it.
We're so thankful that Megan and Becky could join us today to share their knowledge and experience with play-based learning and Native teaching aids, creating those culturally responsive resources for Montana classrooms and for Indigenous communities. We know that meaningful, engaging learning experiences help students retain knowledge, build essential skills, and develop a love of learning. But we acknowledge that finding high-quality, culturally grounded resources that support that approach sometimes feels overwhelming for educators in Montana. We hope that the insights and tools shared today by Megan and Becky offer some starting points for educators to bring more play, exploration, and Indigenous perspectives into their classroom with trusted materials. Please know that the Montana Office of Public Instruction Indian Education for All department also offers a ton of resources on their website that you can review and use in your classroom. In addition to this, the Teacher Learning Hub offers training and professional development to further deepen teachers' understanding and comfort working with Indian Education for All in their classrooms. We thank you for spending your time learning with us, and we hope that you'll join us for our next episode, where we'll be talking about social emotional learning. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep inspiring.